Now, we will go to the northern region, and we are joined by Lamnatu Adam, Executive Director of Sontaba, to speak to us on what is on her heart that something should be done about. She pursued development studies at the university and has been advocating improvement in education service delivery. She's the Executive Director of Sontaba, which literally translates, let's help one another. Sontaba is a women and children's rights advocacy organization based in the northern region. Please, let's hear you.
Good morning, Samson, and then good morning also to our listeners and viewers, as well as our other panelists. I must say something that I want to commend you and also your production team for your interest in inclusivity, and for that matter, ensuring that there is gender, consideration in your programming. And let me say that I listen with great interest, and I am learning a lot from the other great speakers. But before I talk about the issues of gender vulnerability and social protection, I want to quickly make a few comments on my observation in this Ramadan. And it's towards the contribution of religion. I have seen that in this Ramadan, there is an increase in the, sensitization and general sermons around the protection of women and the vulnerable. And I think that it calls for commendation, as you might have heard, Madam A.C. Sutherland, and for that matter, Mr. Kofi Akwa, all bringing in the issues of religion. And this observation, for me, I think, will call for us to collaborate more with religion, to see how they can use their space to further, push towards getting women the emancipation that we need. Nonetheless, I would like to talk briefly about women or gender vulnerability and social protection in the eyes of our current happenings with our economy. Samson, you know that women are, almost half of our human population. And yet we get to suffer the gross inequality gaps, either in income or human capital and the like. If you look at sub-Saharan Africa, women face deeply rooted obstacles to achieving their potential at work and also in other aspects of life. However, evidence suggests that persistent gender inequality affects women, and it will impede, economic and social progress in our development. I'm bringing all of this so that we can appreciate, how, whichever way the economy is, how it's likely to hit women either negatively or otherwise. And because I'm coming from the north, I would want to talk about women farmers who have significantly have less access to and control over and ownership of land and other productive assets, compared to their male counterpart. Land perhaps is the most important economic asset, and women account for just about 12.8% of this agricultural, inputs. Of course, you can understand from where we are coming, we have issues of male dominance and patriarchy. And so discriminatory gender and social norms, limit access to women having, access to productive resources. Now, with the current happenings with our economy, where we have high inflation, coupled with arbitrary increase in goods and services, especially food, it's also greatly affecting women and other vulnerable groups. We have had increase in, farming input. For example, when you take a market survey of the farm input that we have, talk about plowing, talk about surrogate, talk about fertilizer, you would see that there's about 87% price change from last year, from what we have from last year to this year. And even if you take the cost of a bag of maize, which is our staple, it's about 300 Ghana cedi. And how does that translate and impact on women? And for that matter, people with very large family size. From where I come from, women are particularly those who should do whatever that they can to make sure that the bag of corn that is being placed to you, you do whatever you have to do in order to make sure that it becomes a meal. Now, how are women burdened in this? Especially now that we do not have vibrant national economy to withstand the shocks. We are just recovering from COVID. And we all woke up to see what COVID did to us. And yet, we are not making effort in making sure that we are learning from COVID. Now, a lot of the reasons for our current happening is blame on the Ukraine, Ukraine war. And what are we then learning? Because whether we like it or not, it has effect on fertilizer, it has effect on fuel, and also maybe wheat, which we also somehow consume. Now farming season have started. I don't know what programs are there yet, but even fertilizer is not very much accessible for now. Now, how does this trend of economic hardship also affect gender and vulnerability? We've noticed that only people with voices and representation are heard, as we've seen in the industrial strike, as we've seen in unions asking for increase in salary, asking for increase in ways that will make them comfortable enough to absorb this shock. What about the less privileged? I have been asking. What about the rural women with diversified needs? Women who are pregnant, women who are single-headed households, who have a lot of children to feed by themselves. How about people with disability and the excluded? If all of these people are this hard hit, how about my women who are excluded and are living in alleged witches' camps, who have been forgotten for ages? How are they managing the situation? And I think that this calls for us all to, as a matter of agency, and I think as a matter of agency, to enact, in fact, a very universal social protection program that are adequately funded and that will benefit mainly the poorest people. And I've been asking, I know the social protection bill has been there. What has happening to it? What's happening to it? And I think that it should be a matter of priority. Its passage should be a matter of priority. I know that governments have taken 3 months or less to ensure that the laws that they want to see it happens. So I've been asking, is it that this country is not interested in the excluded? Is not interested in bridging the gender gap? Because if not, women's rights organizations have been calling for the passage of the affirmative action bill. We've also been calling for government to, look again. If we need to retable, the social protection bill, we need, as a matter of agency, to pass that. And then I also want to challenge the media and, of course, the civil society to get and hype stories of how the economic impact is hitting, the citizenry, especially our rural folks. And I want to ask the media to also create spaces for the citizens to, actively participate in issues of our national discourse. And that's why I commend this program, Samson, that it's a very splendid program that will allow other people to bring their views and to help all those of us who are in power to put things right. And then also looking at the fact that issues that are confronting women are quite deep-seated, they are quite systemic. We need to also build partnership. And it's one of my asks that we need to build partnership with our religious and traditional authorities towards changing these deep-seated cultural, bottlenecks that impedes the overall growth of our women. And I want to end by saying that we need an agent response to support rural communities, because we know that rural communities, there's nothing else they do except farming. And with this high cost of input, I barely don't know how we can survive that. If a bag of maize is already selling at 300 cedi, and with our northern sector, which is mostly rain-fed, and our traditional method of farming, coupled with our traditional method of farming, and the high cost of input, we are watching and looking at a glaring, a very scary, issue of food insecurity coming up next year. Thank you very much. These are my submission in looking at gender vulnerability and social protection in the eyes of our current happenings with our economy.
Thank you very much, Lamnatu Adam. Lamnatu Adam is the Executive Director of SUNTABA, which literally translates, let's help one another. And her focus in the Northern region by this group has been women and children's rights advocacy, among other issues, affecting more particularly marginalized persons. Right.